Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Jams and Tea podcast, where Jen and I, we spin the jams, we spill the tea, and today we're talking about two brand new records. Technically, a mixtape and a record, but nonetheless, we are going to be talking about the latest project dropped by rapper Tierra Whack. We're going to be talking about her amusingly titled mixtape Wax Museum. And we're also going to be talking about the latest album from rapper YG, The Gentleman's Club. And we're going to start with Tierra Whack here. And Tierra Whack is one of those names where if you know, you know. I feel like the people who have been on to Tierra Whack have known that she has stealthily been one of the coolest and most eccentric talents in the business, working for a while now, specifically kind of in the late 2010s when she came onto the scene with her very unusual and very fun 2018 record Whack World, which was notably an album that was 15 minutes long, where every song was a minute. And I completely understand all of the just sort of all of the buzz around someone like Tierra Whack when I take a look at a project like this, which is a project I love, mind you. But you take a look at it and it's like these are 15 songs. They're a minute long each. They are basically Tierra Whack showcasing how versatile of an artist she is, but foregoing so many traditional signifiers of what albums are supposed to be that it can be disarming. It's probably why she's not a little bit bigger, is that she has never really been willing to compromise herself, at least until 2024's album Worldwide Whack, where we kind of saw her try to posit some sort of mainstream adjacent kind of appeal. And it honestly didn't really go over well with people, despite the fact that, like, I liked the album. I liked Tierra on the album. It was really more that I kind of wanted the music on there to match her eccentricity a little bit more. I can understand why it disappointed people, but I was just kind of grateful and appreciative of the music that we got from her at the time. So I was kind of wondering what exactly this meant for Tierra Whack and how she would pivot, if she would pivot, what she would do next. And now we have this little mixtape here, Wax Museum, which is notably a more robust project than her album debut at 27 minutes and 12 songs. But honestly, I kind of feel like this is a both refinement and an expansion of her first album in a lot of respects, because what we get on here is, yeah, it's not exactly long, and if you're looking for something massively substantive, I don't think you'll necessarily find it here. But these 27 minutes are loaded with some of the most versatile performances, some of the most eccentric flows. Like, I mean, when I say a versatile performer, Tierra Whack is kind of the ideal embodiment of the concept. She's on here with flows that match people like Kendrick. There's one song on here which starts off in the first minute and it is straight up a Drake flow. Like a more competent Drake flow than the ones I've been fucking listening to for the last 2 weeks. I'll tell you that much. And not to mention there is MF Doom style flows all over this thing too, particularly on the very beginning and the very end. And Tierra takes some opportunities to dig in and expand her artistic persona on songs like Earwax, for instance, which is kind of a sort of state of affairs for the artist known as Tierra Whack. And honestly, I had a ton of fun with this mixtape. I think that this thing is a blast. I think it's colorful. I think it's silly, but I also think it's buoyant and energetic and fun. And it's just not the kind of lower stakes project we often get. And despite it being lower stakes, I would say this is an excellent release that a lot of people need to be paying more attention to.
So I'm a big fan of Tierra Whack. Worldwide Whack is how I got into her stuff. That's how I heard about her initially. And that's a very good record. One that, combines, God, just one of my favorite sounds in modern hip hop, which is that Afro beat laced boom bap on songs like
Yes.
Misbehave and Chanel Pit that she's so good at and people like Lil Sims are really good at. But there's also a lot of lo-fi influences like on the Shower song, and Worldwide Whack is a bit of a widespread of different influences, different flavors, different styles of songs. And never let it be said that I'm so consistent in my principles that I miss something when it's looking me right in the face. Because if you've been with me on this channel for a bit, you know that I'm big into dynamism. I love the
Oh,
idea of an album that can oscillate between different sonic ideas, different conceptual frameworks, things like that. I like
yeah.
when an artist is able to provide a wide berth of types of material. But this album, Wax Museum, is much more focused
Mhm.
on this tight Philly slash East Coast boom bap. And again, if you know me for a while, you know that boom bap is my
Jen is the
favorite
boom bap
style of
guy.
rap.
Hmm.
I am the boom bap head. Illmatic is my favorite of the like big classic hip hop albums for a reason. Just because I'm super into boom bap. I love MF Doom. I loved the Mobb Deep record that leans a lot on boom bap, and I really really like this record because this is all Tierra whack boom bap with this great glistening production all across this record from people like Chris Keys and especially Conductor Williams, who
Yeah.
I haven't listened to a lot of this guy's production work elsewhere, but I really dig what he brings to Tierra's abilities here. There's a song on this in particular that once I heard it, I knew I was gonna love this record. It's actually on the YG album. There's a song on there that sounds exactly like the album Complicate Your Life with Violence. One of my favorite like modern underground hip hop records by this producer Larange and the MC Jeremiah J. It's a collaborative album between them. I'll get to that in a second. But what reminds me on this of that album Complicate Your Life with Violence is songs like Wax Paper with these
Hmm.
moody, eerie synths with these tight boom bap flows underneath it. I love the entire second verse on Wax Paper is one of my favorite musical moments of the year. Like, if you haven't checked this out, listen to some of the bars on this verse. Shackles on, I kick 'em off. We was poor, chicken broth, brand new whip. I took the sticker off. I got the juice, the sauce. He want to lick it off. Got a visit with the dentist because of all these plaques. Sleep, man, I hardly nap. On point like a party hat. Just, and that's the thing
On point like
is
a
that
party hat is such a great lyric. I can't even like that just kills me. I love that.
Boom bap is great for stacking little moments of wordplay like that on top of each other. Which I mean, one of my favorite moments in Tierra Whack's whole discography is on Misbehave, where she's just like, "I'm an angel, Bassett." I love her little puns, and this is an album that's full of great wordplay, great lyricism, and that's what makes this so engaging to follow. Because even where a lot of people's biggest critique of this album is going to be that it's kind of one note.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these beats and a lot of these flows are like, let me put it this way. The way that she's saying things can vary because you're right, she's doing a lot of different impressions and inflections on this, but the actual like bars and the beat for beat syllables are often very repetitive in terms of their structure,
Yeah.
which is fine when you have such a good hold on your pen. That's the thing about
Exactly.
Tierra is that you can write 30 minutes of great boom bap one-liners if
Yes.
you can write 30 minutes worth of great boom bap one-liners. The thing is, she can. And
Absolutely.
what I love about Wax Museum is how it dedicates itself to this kind of show of force. I mean, on the very first song on the album, she's kind of puffing her chest out, saying, they're daring me to rap, but,
Mhm.
I'm gonna come out and blow the whole game away if I really commit myself to rapping for an entire project because I'm just that good of a rapper. And I talked about this on the Jill Scott. It's a rare thing that an album promises to be good and then delivers. And
Yeah.
this is one of
Yeah.
those cases where Tierra just promises to make something great and consistently great and just never really lets you down. You have
Nope.
songs like Brazilian Wax, where she's talking
My
about how
favorite.
all these ways that she's made her own lane and surrounded by copycats. One of my favorite bars on this. Go outside and see clones. You're never truly alone. That may go over your head.
You
A
know, a
drone.
drone. Wish I didn't miss you. Tears drop into Angie Stone.
Love it. And like I said, just so many I could quote bars off of this all day. Just because this is one of my favorite, just in terms of pure
Yes,
lyrical content, this is the best album of the year so far.
I
Uh
I am similarly kind of in awe of Tierra's pen on here. And honestly, like, of all things, I would compare the way this album flows and its general construction to the JPEG Mafia album we reviewed a couple of weeks ago, where you kind of have to design your songs to flow into each other and maintain a sense of homogeneity. The only issue here is that that project was kind of self-cannibalizing and didn't really like capitalize on the potential of actually doing that. This, on the other hand, is a 27-minute long album with, only a handful of songs. And it's like, yeah, I kind of want more lower stakes projects like this so they can be more refined and interesting executions of very, very specific ideas, which I think this is. In fact, I kind of think that the sound of this is stealthily just a little bit genius and boundary pushing because it doesn't immediately like sound. I mean, like it does sound like boom bap, and there is a little bit of Afrobeat in here. Like Tierra is kind of one of those people who just really thrives off of unusual rhythms, which I'm gonna eat that shit up. But at the same time, I also feel like there is sort of I don't know, maybe there is just like people see projects like this and I feel like they just kind of assume that, oh, it's a mixtape, it's like this, it's not, and it doesn't have the dynamism like a proper album, but it's like I don't necessarily want her to be making a proper album unless she like wants to be. That's kind of the thing with the last album is that it sort of felt like maybe she was trying to paint herself into a bit of a corner, perhaps. This is something where it feels like the creative limitations are gone. I don't feel like she is trying to do anything other than have a really good fucking time. And with the sound specifically on here, I love how it's a combination of boom bap, which is like the most foundational sort of nuts and bolts subgenre of hip hop, but she adds little twinges of psychedelia into all of this. Very, very subtle, but very, very carefully and dexterously applied production flourishes that I think make a world of difference. Because, again, when people go for boom bap, they go for impact. They go for percussion, they go for big, and they go for loud. And you're either throwing it back old school and you're sounding like a traditional drum break, or you're, hitting heavy with the perks and the 808s in the modern context. Tierra is somewhere in the spiritual middle of these two planes. And somehow she's able to, add a little bit of reverb here, add a little bit of an echo there, and it gives this album a mood and a pace and a tone. And I kind of prefer it to be in one lane if its aesthetic directions are so plentiful because there's so much here. I feel like you need to find your center in one aspect of its construction. And in terms of like, yeah, I think she made the right choice here in choosing what to forego for this issue. Because, like, yeah, I agree with you. This is one of the most compellingly written albums of the year, and it's not even 30 minutes long. Like, if you take a look at some of these songs, like, take a look at a song like the one that sort of Jen just mentioned, my favorite on here, which is Brazilian Wax. Like, look at the fucking bars on here. Look at this verse and just look at these paragraphs upon paragraphs. Like, I'm not somebody who needs every single rapper to come out and be this overly verbose, Black Thought-esque sort of social polemics, like trying to break down all of these things. But at the same time, you know what I love? I love wordplay. I love playing with linguistics. And this is something that I'm not going to say that modern hip hop has lost its edge at this or anything, but the specifically playful aspect, like guys who really do just love the language. Aesop Rock is just a great example of a rapper who clearly loves language and wants to show you how much he loves language. Tierra Whack, I would put in the exact same category with the exact same level of talent. And I think that's worth appreciating. I think that this thing's shortcomings aren't really shortcomings. I kind of think that they're just part of the grand design. Like, I think that we should appreciate when things are more intentionally designed to be consumed in a specific way or with a specific context. Because if we just consider everything, that's kind of why this being a mixtape makes sense to me, is because if we just consider all albums to be on an even playing field, then we're going to start holding them to standards and, by rules that aren't really fair or don't really meet it halfway. So yeah, I mean, like I could see how you could walk away from this like feeling like it was insubstantial. But if you're someone who values Tierra Whack for the things that she's good at, I mean, this is fantastic. I can't really say that this thing puts a foot wrong.
Yeah, and what's great about this is that the focus is the key to why this is so good. Like,
Yeah.
I think you're right in saying that with Worldwide Whack, Tierra trying to show off just how many things that she can do kind of makes each one feel a little bit thinner than maybe it should be.
Yeah.
And I can tell that just based on the way that I've studied Tierra's output, she's at her strongest when she's able to hyper focus a little
Hmm.
bit. Even
Yeah.
if it's just for a song that's only going to be a minute long, if she can focus on that and find the way to do each one to its maximum capacity, that's where her biggest strengths are.
Yeah.
And so I loved seeing that come to fruition on this. And I love the way that Conductor Williams is just able to play around with these beats because
Oh yeah.
Tierra's pen and her flows are so strong that Conductor Williams is able to get away with a little bit more of a wonky
Hmm.
production than maybe he normally would be. So you have
Oh
songs like
yeah.
Queen's Crown with this big chip soul. 215 is another big chip soul moment. But then
Love
you've
it.
also got songs like Siren that's got this really classically mixed in piano on it over God. Siren is maybe my favorite vocal performance on this just because she's going
Stellar.
so hard. And then the
Hmm.
chorus has this little inflection on it that makes it sound kind of inhuman and a little bit
Yeah.
off kilter, which is perfect for the concept and perfect for the literary reference of like, I can be your siren. I can guide you where you need to go. Playing a little bit of a trick on the audience by like, leading them away from where they've been to somewhere better.
It's like the opening track on here, Whack Job, which is kind of a sort of stealthily brilliant song in how it unfolds because you're slowly listening to Tierra Whack like deteriorate within the context of the song. So like the second half of it is this intentionally like slowed down thing where you kind of feel like the song undermines its own momentum to make you go like, wait, what? And then
Yeah, the
it kind
beat
of
like slows down, but is still the same beat.
yeah, yeah, oh God, I love that little technique just because it adds a little bit of something to the flow of this and it's like, yes, she's designing these songs to be a little bit homogenous in terms of structure, but she's also like employing lots of different techniques like this in order to make leading you from one idea to the next feel a lot more versatile and like it has a little bit more juice than most people probably would apply to such a project. And I think that's worth noting. Like I really love how Tierra just seems to understand how odd she sounds when she's really trying to. And that's kind of why I came to love her because she was collaborating with people like Flying Lotus and like the wonky influences from Flying Lotus's sound absolutely feels like it's sort of being channeled by Conductor Williams on here, which is not a fit I would have like guessed would work with him just because that's not typically what he does, but I have nothing but good things to say. Like whenever you hear the Conductor Williams producer tag on here, you're about to hear probably one of the best sounding things on the album.
You know what this really reminded me of? This reminded me of Live Laugh Love, the Earl Sweatshirt album that we did.
Yeah.
Just because that's an album that's doing the same in some stretches. On
Yes.
my favorite points of that album, Earl's doing a kind of similar thing where he's got these very clearly modern, shined up, polished boom bap stylings to it, like on Crisco. This album is full of moments like Crisco, which are my favorite on that Earl Sweatshirt album. And this Tierra Whack record, this mixtape is just full of stuff that is of that quality, where you have kind of wonky production over top tier meat and potatoes boom bap flows. And to me, that's just a perfect combination. That's something that's going to get me immediately hooked. If you've got a performer that's hitting the fundamentals and a producer that's able to weave in the steps in between that have been so well studied in that regard to make it pop, then you got something really special. And here, I think this mixtape has something really special in that regard.
I absolutely agree. I think this should be like for the hip hop heads out there, this is a must listen for the year for you. Just to have something to like I always love to have these kind of like shorter albums just to be like, "Oh man, I have 30 minutes to burn before the end of my shift." And then I'll go to like one of my, I'll turn on Frank Ocean's Endless or something and like this is being added to my canon of albums that take place over the length of a sitcom episode that I need to burn time while listening to because they're fun, which is not I would not say that that is not a lofty canon because I have been listening to albums like it for like 6 7 years for this exact purpose. So I'm glad to have another one to add to the rotation, frankly. And I hope that this is something that Tierra can build on because, again, I'm waiting for her to work with somebody. Like, if she did a collaboration that was entirely an album with Conductor Williams, that would be so fucking cool. If she could find a way to get an entire album produced by Flying Lotus, that would be album of the year territory. That would be like foundation shifting. But as it stands, I am still an avid fan of Miss Wax, and honestly, I would say that this is the best thing I've heard from her so far. I would put this above the other two projects, and I will definitely be coming back to it later on this year. So, thumbs up from me.
Major thumbs up for Tierra Whack. Yeah, I was putting this on my list for the year, and it's way up. I was very
Yeah,
surprised, but I I
it's gonna
didn't
be
I
above
didn't
a lot of
question it.
albums that I wouldn't have expected it to be above.
Yeah, I was surprised, but I didn't question it for a second once I felt that it was right to do.
And next up here, we have the new album from rapper YG, The Gentleman's Club. And I'm going to defer to Jen here because this was your this is what you put forward. And also, I am going to confess, I barely know who YG is. I'm so serious. Like I was just like, I know that that is a rapper's name. I have heard him on a feature, and that is it. That is literally it. I've got it. So I went into this normally how you go into things that I throw at you. So why did you want to cover an album by YG? And what is your history with Mr. YG? I only know him in reference to one specific song, and it's really less a song and more for how it starts.
I honestly didn't know much about YG up until this past year or so. But with the release of the song 2004, which I alluded to last episode, a couple episodes ago, maybe when we were talking
Mhm.
about, were we talking about Isaiah Rashad when I
I think
brought that
so.
up? I think so. But anyway, there is a segment, a pretty recent segment where I bring this up. I'll just bring it up again. What got me onto YG was the release of the song 2004, which starts with the bar, "When I was young, I got raped by a bitch twice my age." And the whole
Crazy.
song is an explanation of that phenomena. And the whole song is an exploration of how that experience affected YG's like development into an adult and
That
how that
that is borderline fucking unheard of in hip hop for those of you who are unaware. There is a real there is just sort of an unspoken problem about rappers specifically being sexually assaulted when they were young that is just bizarrely going very unexamined up until a very choice few people decided to say something about it. And people like Vince Staples and people like YG have said something, and honestly, I commend them for it. That's not an easy thing to be able to say, especially in the hyper masculine place that hip hop has always been in. That's a very vulnerable thing where you're opening yourself up to attacks from a lot of people who are going to interpret your words very uncharitably.
and the hyper masculinity is I think key to understanding who YG is and where he is now, because up until this point his music has all been, I don't know a nicer way to say this, it's the epitome of the stereotypes of gangster rap from back in the 90s,
Yep.
because YG is actually out in the streets. And a lot of what I'm going to say about him and about this album is attempting to come from that framework in mind. YG is really from this life in a way that people like Kendrick Lamar are not,
Mm-hmm.
just to speak plainly.
Yeah.
And so a rapper like YG is going to bring different things to the table, different things with his pen. He's got different motivations for writing and rapping than somebody like Kendrick does.
Yeah.
And, he had a big hit that I can't even say the name of. And he had this big album, My Crazy Life, which was a big hit for him off of the success of that song. But a few years ago, he put out a record called I Got Issues, which I listened to and found basically lacking in a lot of ways that the Gentleman's Club addresses very directly.
Hmm.
So I don't even feel the need to speak on that previous record too extensively. Because what we're getting on the Gentleman's Club is YG reflecting on his own artistry, his persona, his presentation of himself, both in his rapping and in his day-to-day life. And there's this big narrative framework that's going over this album with these vocal snippets that are, again, very complicate your life with violence. That
Yeah.
is this narrator talking about the Gentleman's Club as a place, and the Gentleman's Club as a place where men go to tell things to other men that they would not dare speak anywhere else. It's a kind of therapy room for the real gangsters of the world.
YG posits the gentleman's club as the diametric opposition to the concept of locker room talk. It's basically a place where male intimacy, non-sexual male intimacy, can exist and be protected by the establishment that it is. It's like you go in, you air your shit, you leave, you go right back into your life. That's kind of the mentality here of the concept being built.
And the intro verse on this, it's talking about how the Gentleman's Club is a place of peace.
Hmm.
We graduated from the hard knocks, I think is a key
Yes.
lyric of this song. We graduated from the hard knocks. The Gentleman's Club is a place of peace, and it's a place to have a good time, but it's also a place to reflect. And this album straddles those two ideas in ways that can be kind of uneven. But where I think the genius of this album lies is that YG is really attempting to give something that the streets can hold on to in a way that albums that portend this kind of intention aren't as successful at because they're too dour,
Yeah.
frankly.
Yeah.
There are a lot of albums that attempt to really bear the soul of the rapper, but because you're not giving the people what they want to hear, it's like that dialogue scene in Mo Better Blues, where they're talking about you're not playing the shit that people like, so they're not going to show up to hear what you want to say in the
Th-
first place.
They're not going to seek out this place as a refuge if they don't feel some level of comfort or allure of some kind, because again, then you're just kind of confronted with the very things that you're trying to escape. So you have to make it an enticing prospect on some level.
Yeah, and you have to make the path to reflection enticing.
Hmm.
And you do that by starting this album with a couple of straight up bangers,
Yeah.
like OMG with Pusha T, which is just again classic braggadocio, very moody keys. Love the symphonics of the bass on this with the hi-hats. Love YG talking about just my favorite one-liner on this whole record is just I finessed Uncle Sam.
Yeah, that's a good one. I thought about Vince Staples the moment I heard that.
Yeah. And it's about, and there's a lot of moments in this album that are like this, and really it's my biggest critique of it, but at the same time, it's one of the album's biggest strengths is that occasionally the album can get a little bit lost in its declaration of being reflective and can sound a little bit more conventional in terms of its braggadocio, being rich, getting girls, blowing stuff up type narratives. But you also have moments like OMG where Pusha T is able to illustrate this kind of stark contrast between the reputation that hip hop has in the public consciousness versus the art world. Or when he
Mhm.
talks about like winning a Grammy in the snow, like YG and Pusha T have this very similar appeal where they're like
Yeah,
guys who've actually like done really bad things.
like
Like
actual drug
actual
dealers.
drug
Like,
dealers.
yeah,
Yeah, like
like let's
actual
not mince
drug
words.
dealers,
They talk about it.
actual drug dealers and gangbangers that brag about winning Grammys and going to Fashion Week. And
Yeah.
there's an appeal there that's it goes beyond like Wolf of Wall Street, even though I think of Wolf of Wall Street a lot when I'm listening to this album. But then you also get songs like Kudos, which
Mhm.
flirt with the membrane of this album as typical braggadocio and also big reflection with, moments like the price to get in, you know what you have to do, and the idea of, rapping over Kill You by Eminem while also talking about how tired
Yeah.
you are by all the things that used to get you off about the
I
rap
had a
game.
shocking amount of Eminem comparisons while listening to this that I did not anticipate. He's not really a rapper I end up comparing many to, but in the writing specifically, I feel like there is a very similar kinship between him and YG.
And there's a lot of what I would say are very explicit like attempts to evoke Eminem's songwriting, or at least
Yeah,
moments where it's very inspired by it.
very much.
Like the song Hitman, which
Yes.
takes a very Stan style of verse construction to tell this story. And this is the song that reminds me most of that album, Complicate Your Life with Violence, because it's got these really spooky strings
Oh,
underneath it
yes.
that just I really associate with that album, and it's just one of my favorite sounds are these kind of really eerie, spooky strings and keys over rapping like this. And he's talking about, this guy putting a hit out on YG, but he's like rushing the hitman to go do the job. So he has a run in with the hitman and they get into an argument. And it turns out that the guy that called on the hitman is YG's younger self, which admittedly kind of clunkily sets up this idea of the gangster, the guy that belongs in the gentleman's club, as this extension of YG's persona that, kind of like in Stephen King's The Dark Half, has taken on a life of its own
That, I mean,
and threatens to consume him. And so multiple songs on this album return to this dialogue. Ready to Die is framed
yep,
explicitly as a response to Hitman, where we are returning to that voice. But where I think this album is at its strongest, and where I think this album made its most impactful moves for me, is in its third act
for sure.
when we go from Ready to Die all the way into the end. Because up until this point, my biggest critique with it was that, yeah, it's playing into the kayfabe
Hmm.
maybe a little bit too much, especially with some of the features on this,
Yeah,
which feel more disconnected from what the concept of the album is actually trying to do.
yeah.
Even I would go so far as to say that, like, people like Tyler, the Creator, whose presence I would normally love on an album like this, he's
It's
good on this
it's weird,
song. He's
but it's
good on
weird.
this song, but it's not really contributing all that much to the overall scope of the thing. And really, that song that he's on the low is not really contributing to the satirical bent that this album has at all, which again is kind of a strength and kind of a weakness of it. It's a thing that I've had a lot of complicated feelings about, but ultimately, and I'm going to get into the particulars of how I came to this conclusion later, but I have enough evidence to know that YG is genuinely trying to do something with it,
Oh, for
that on
sure.
the moments where it stumbles, I hesitate to call it short-sighted so much as intentionally giving the people what they want so that the more confrontational moments hit the way that they need to hit. Because
Hmm.
then you got to think, after On the Low, you've got We Know the Truth, which is the most directly addressing present day stuff that YG does on this. He's talking about his potential involvement in the death of this guy Draco, who, I'm just going to be for real and say I don't know anything about this situation. So I'm just going to say that I think the song is pretty good and move on because I don't know much about the actual
Yeah,
politics of it and how the song is an extension of that. But let's talk about the third act of this album, which is where I think it's going to run into its most like capital C controversy with
yeah.
one song in particular.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
But I want to know what you have to say about this album as a whole. Like, and what did you get out of coming into this as your pretty much introduction to YG apart from 2004?
So this is going to be an insanely difficult opinion to like wholly articulate, but I need to preface it with a kind of thesis statement in that I walked away from this with kind of a profound respect for YG, a guy who, again, I knew absolutely nothing about. Because when I take a look at what he's trying to do on this album, I'm like, you are a conceptual artist. You are putting your best foot forward and really, really trying to carve your own path and be your own guy and like take advantage of it's like hip hop isn't just a thing to this guy. It's not just a way to make money. It's not just like he wants to do and say something. And I'm always going to appreciate that no matter what. And I really feel like he takes steps that are like measurable and identifiable to make sure that he stands out from the pack. And honestly, I think that some of the most like holistic compliments I can give go to the production end of things. This album sounds fucking amazing. This album
Yes.
sounds expensive as shit. Like every single flourish on here is shiny. Everything sounds like it's made of crystal, but it never really sounds sterile either. I never had that problem with it. And even if there are moments on songs that I might deem a bit like repetitive or like instrumentally they don't wholly work, they're usually in service of the song trying to make a point. And even if it's being clumsy, I'm still appreciating the intentionality because I know what hip hop albums on like default sound like. And this isn't one of them. So I feel like, going into this, I saw how it was being received and I was just kind of like, I feel like people are being a little unfair. And I feel like that's an insanely difficult position to be put in because I'm going to be frank with you. I don't like this album very much. Uh, and the thing is because my opinion is difficult to articulate because I agree with basically everything that you said before, in that there is just, I understand that like YG he's clearly making moves that are fitting of someone who fancies themselves a proper artist, a proper writer. And even if he stumbles over himself, I am always going to applaud people for taking swings than playing it safe. Like playing it safe is how you make albums that nobody gives a fuck about. Like, do you want to be out here being the game in 2026? No, no, you don't. I would much rather be listening to this than anything made by him. And I appreciate his attempts at storytelling. I appreciate his attempts at trying to go for like loftier, greater themes. And he's clearly taking from influences that aren't necessarily something you would immediately identify when you listen to this album. Like, for example, the song conceit about the hitman and the whole like younger version of himself, that's an MF Doom song. Like, literally. I mean, there is actually an MF Doom song on the Victor Vaughn album about his younger self taking on his own persona and then trying to kill his younger self by hiring a hitman. And there's also, there's lots of storytelling songs on here that make you think of Eminem, like early 2000s hip hop and that kind of stuff. And it's very identifiable, very solid sort of construction that I feel like is doing a decent job at showing me what the greater vision is here. And like the idea of the club, again, that's an MF Doom concept. That's a Ghostface Killer concept. And I don't necessarily feel like it's a poorly executed one either. It's just that there are some elements where like you telling me that YG is like one of the guys from the streets kind of made everything in regards to my own opinions on this album make a little bit more sense. Not to imply that his priorities aren't here, but really just more so that I'm saying that YG is realer than most people, which is why this album feels a little bit clumsy and just how like it's from somebody who's heard how these ideas work elsewhere, but maybe doesn't fully understand why they work, but he still understands enough to have the aesthetic and to have like a rough idea. Like again, he is not facilely trying to copy these ideas, and I don't want to imply that he is. But there are moments on songs that are otherwise fine, like OMG, for instance. Just boy, that hook. I don't like it. It's just
Yeah,
it's a bit
yeah.
repetitive, and honestly, it feels very odd when Pusha T comes into the second half of this song, and the energies are very, very different. Like I again, the features on this album are kind of a microcosm for the whole thing in that I don't think any of them are bad. I just don't really understand why they're all here, other
Yeah,
than
everybody who comes on this album, aside from on the last two songs,
yes.
kind of misses the point of what this album is trying to
I
do.
Completely agree. And that's not even like a huge complaint of mine. It's like that happens a lot with hip hop features is that some people just don't really get the memo and it can be kind of weird. But it's not the end all be all because you can always sort of be like, "Oh, this, genuine expression here is really more implied in to be an ironic sort of manifestation of what I'm talking about." So, you can kind of worm your way in and out of that. But to me, it's just in how he handles his concepts and just how he's able to juggle all of what he's doing because he's trying to do a lot of things and he ends up being a very jack of all trades, master of none affair. And this is an album where you need to master something. And there are elements of this that I like again, the storytelling aspect of the song, like Hitman and then the reprisal on Ready to Die. However, I cannot help but feel as though these songs do not mind their concepts enough. Like, it is interesting that a song like Hitman is on here. I don't really understand what it does, though. There's supposed to be something that I'm supposed to learn about the guy who's calling the hitman or the guy who's getting the hitman called on. And it feels like we're kind of getting that at the start of the song, where it does this is the perspective of this guy, this is the perspective of this guy, and it's like sort of painting the hitman as less a person and more a tool that is being used to solve various grievances that are being painted as, fruitless and kind of petty and this violence that is becoming of all of this is, it's a bit worthless. And I understand that. But I can't help but feel as though it is just a very plainly executed concept. It's just kind of here's the guy and here's the people and then there you go. And it's
And
like there's
it has a perfect like stereotypical trying a little bit too hard last bar for a story song like this, which is like, Hitman, you were supposed to kill the old me. And
yes.
that's the first time it's like a twist that's supposed to end the song,
And
but it just comes out of nowhere.
if that's the goal of the song, to me the way you accomplish this is, and I'm not saying that you had to do this exact specific thing, but like if you're a writer and you're tackling this concept, a good way to accomplish this is by doing what you were already doing, showcasing these multiple perspectives of the hitman being hired and make them sound pettier and pettier and then have the hitman not go through with it. Like that's just one way you could potentially show just like, yeah, this stuff isn't really all it's cracked up to be. And also my participation in all of this, my agency, I'm not I'm not feeling it. It's not me, but at the same time, I am still predisposed to violence. There is a way you can sort of situate the Hitman character as a liminal state of potential for YG. And again, this is very like high-minded and all that stuff, and I'm not expecting him to meet me where I'm at. I'm just saying that it's a better example of how you can hone a concept. And again, I appreciate him for doing it. I just don't think he does it super well. And there are other songs on here where I feel like the pursuit of trying to make music that people want to listen to, as you were saying, the point that you were making, in the pursuit of that, there are songs on here that just I don't really care for. Simon Says or Dinner Dates and Heartbreaks especially is just it's just one of those songs and it doesn't like give itself anything and I'm just kind of like yeah, the stereotypical nature of the subject matter feels like it's actually superseding any unique qualities that YG is bringing to the table here. And I know they're there. They're just being overshadowed on some songs like this, where I feel like the production's great, YG is trying, but the songs just aren't fully there yet. And then we get to this final third where, this is a bigger album. It's expensive. It sounds good. There's lots of, it's doing lots of things. This is where we kind of see it attempt to pull the whole thing home. And I do think that the album's best and most memorable moments come from here. I think Righting My Wrongs is one of the better songs on the album, even if I feel like it, again, could have gone a little bit further in what it was trying to do. But I'm going to address the elephant in the room. We have to talk about Tiffany.
Let me
I'm
preface
going.
it by saying this.
Yeah,
I,
please.
I I want you to have your whole spiel, but I just want
Yeah,
to say I've like looked around at ways that some people have been talking about this.
good. I had no, this completely blindsided me, so I want to know what you have to say as someone who's thought about it more.
I want to just go ahead and say that there's some people that are straight up not engaging with what's going on here.
And I
Like
knew that would be the case.
here's the thing. I've never like paid attention to No Jumper, but a video of theirs came up in my feed as I was like looking for reactions to this.
Mm.
And I saw them like sitting down talking about, the internet is saying this about YG because he said this in the song. He said, trans woman, whatever. And they're like, well, okay, let's sit down and listen to the song. And they're literally like scrolling through previews of the song that he posted on Instagram
What?
and like
No.
skipping through it and doing it live and then trying to talk about what the song means. And then that's not the only reaction that I saw to this that gave me the ick, but that's the one that was the least charitable to actually engaging with the text. Let's put it that way. And what I think is happening here, I'm going to save that for the end. You start. You say what you wanted to say.
Well,
Because
yeah, okay.
I'm interested to see what you have to say about this. Again, as somebody who came in blind to this, not knowing much about the
Yeah.
artist, how did this hit you?
Okay. This is why my point is difficult to make, is because this is simultaneously like it's a big outlier in terms of like my reaction to songs on this album, and that it is like it earned something primal out of me. I will say that much. But it is also just sort of a very effective demonstration of why I think that YG is admirable, but this is still kind of a failure. Because I won't lie to anybody, I'm not going to be one of those disingenuous shitheads who's like, first of all, I am not saying that YG is transphobic. In fact, I kind of think saying that blanketly is just kind of fucking stupid if you actually pay attention to what he's saying on the song. Like, you have to very, very much ignore exactly the point that he makes, which is not subtle. It's not subtle at all, which is why I think that there is very, like, that's why I'm not understanding of the people who are being all weird about this, is that it's like, he's not doing this in a way that obfuscates itself. I
Well, I
don't
mean,
think
people
he's
are being
hiding
weird about
anything.
it. The people that I'm seeing being weird about it are the people that aren't paying attention.
Yes.
That's the thing, is
And,
that people are just seeing they're skipping ahead to the I'm a trans woman bar and
yes.
then they just check out. I
And
see it. I watched it happen with my own eyes in that fucking no jumper video. I could not believe what I was looking at.
And it's why my point is difficult to make here, because simultaneously, I do not agree with that criticism. I think it is short-sighted and lame and just kind of shitty to do that as a critic. And I also have not had like a more viscerally upset reaction to a song all year than I did this one. And I'm not going to like front or anything. I had a very hard day at work that involved me hearing some very like transphobic violence, and that like really rattled me, and then I had to listen to this song completely unprompted afterwards. So it had a like it struck a nerve, is all I'm saying here. So, if you want to write off what I have to say as me being like provoked, then fine, go ahead, I don't really care. But this song is a storytelling song, very much in the vein of like old Eminem, Slim Shady style stuff, about a sexual encounter at a club that ultimately dovetails into discovering that the romantic interest in this song is a trans woman, and the man who wants to sleep with the trans woman goes on a violent sort of crime spree because they freak out that this happened to them. And then at the very end, they kind of circle back to the trans woman in question, and he does like a thing where, there he threatens to kill her, but she says something, but then the song stops, and then YG kind of pulls everything back and is like, basically it's the spotlit moment of him sort of dropping the mic and being like, this is a real thing that happens to people. And like he is unquestionably making a pro-trans song. He just did it in, I think, the worst and clumsiest way you possibly could. Because the biggest issue with this, obviously, off the jump, is that you're making a song about the perspective of a trans woman that does not involve the perspective of a trans woman. Like the character of her in this song is sidelined to a degree that she ceases to even really be. Like, I appreciate that she is acted on the song at all just to be voiced, but at the same time, her agency in any of this, her sort of perspective, it is a unquestionably a better way to write this song from her perspective than his. And also, we cannot ignore the sort of long held sort of stereotype slash fear slash trope of the man who discovers that a trans woman who wants to sleep with him, does not have the expected set of genitalia that he has, and then they become violent because that's a real thing that happens, and it is a problem. It is a scary thing that people have to deal with. And obviously, YG knows that. YG understands that and wants those people to feel seen. It's just that he has not stepped outside of his own perspective enough to tell a story like this with this amount of gravity, in my opinion. And so the sensationalist parts of it, the violent parts of it that are over the top and ridiculous in the same way that old Eminem stuff is, this is really less me objecting to the transphobia in the song. And really, the best point for comparison I can have with this is the song Kim, which is, again, a song that has nothing technically wrong with it and that I don't like object to on a construction level. It's just that spiritually, I do kind of find it rancid. And I do a little bit here. It's not intentionally, though. And just like Kim's not intentionally so. It's honest more than anything. But I just can't really get on board with the trying to explicitly sympathize with a perspective that we're not lending any dimensionality to at all. We are still, at the end of the day, more focused on the perspective and more sympathetic to, at least in the context of how an audience member is supposed to engage with the song. It's like when the idea of the trans woman being revealed is brought up, it's like it's understood that the reaction is violence. It's just sort of assumed to go that direction. And I feel like that's a very distinct mistake to make. Just the immediate sort of push that feels, it feels like it reinforces the idea of the reaction rather than pushing against it. And that just made me feel really weird. And this like, and not to mention, the worst part about this, the part that I do actually object to, shockingly, is the music. The first half of the beat on here, this is like one of the most gross creative choices I think I've heard, is that it's this really sad, melodramatic thing that's painting the way for what I said. And it's just like, this is not warranting of this tone, man. Like, you do not need to paint this as a fucking Shakespearean tragedy that this guy hit on a chick who had a dick. Like, it's just not, like, don't do that. It's weird. It's weird that we're trying to set the tone of being like doomed and like imperiled and stuff. And it's like, no, if the song was taking place from her perspective, this tone would make sense. But because it is from the aggressor, because it is from the perpetrator of violence, it just feels like there are too many implicit choices in this song that do not explicitly sympathize with that man, but implicitly sympathize with him. And the text and the construction of the song are at war with each other. And that war kind of makes it crumble to dust. I appreciate it because honestly, rappers talking about trans women at all is kind of a net good in a way, because visibility is important and pretending like people don't exist in art is a good way to try and erase them. I like that people like Kendrick Lamar are bringing things like this up, and I like that YG tried. I think it's admirable. That being said, the byline for this album and this song for me is that it is an admirable failure.
The thing about Tiffany that I want to focus on is that, yeah, it's clunky,
Very, very.
but it's a product of who this is for,
Mm-hmm.
which is, I
Yes.
think, key to understanding why it fails in some key places,
I mean, we
is
had this
that,
conversation when Kendrick Lamar dropped his song on Mr. Morale. Like, this exact discussion basically happened.
yeah. This is more for, there's literally a moment where he says, "What would you do if you were Chris?" And
Yes.
that little bit of narrative framing contextualizes the intended audience, right? It's not
Hmm.
something that's meant to be like a soapbox about protecting the dolls.
Nah.
It's a song that's for to make the gangsters consider what they're doing to women.
Yes.
The problem is that frequently the aesthetic of it emphasizes this naturalism to
Yep.
the different steps that are happening here.
Hmm.
Where as soon as we get that reveal that I'm a trans woman, there's a beat switch and a this awful hook comes in that he
It is a
keeps
bad hook.
repeating, where he keeps repeating throughout all of it, that I know is meant to be like a look inside of Chris's head as he goes on this spree, but it's a distraction from what the song is really about in a
Hmm.
lot of ways. And it's a moment where it's trying to, again, flirt with the membrane of being a real gangster album and being a kind of satirical internal look at the mindset. And it's clunky, but it's trying,
It
clearly.
is.
And
It
so
is 100%.
I want to extend a lot of charity to it, but to just say the quiet part out loud that I feel like I need to say, as a as a person who is not a black trans woman,
Yes, naturally.
people are allowed to feel however they want to feel, coming from
Absolutely.
that place.
Absolutely.
Me, I'm taking this from the perspective of a music critic who's trying to look at what this is trying to do.
Yes.
So if the visceral reaction that something like this gives you is something that is genuinely like too much to bear, I understand. But at the same time, I'm trying to look at who this is very explicitly framed towards and think about it that way, which is where my wants to be charitable towards the way that the song is constructed comes from,
Oh,
even if
absolutely.
I'm not afraid to say that there's a lot of missteps on this song.
No, I mean, like, if I was to pivot in the complete other direction, basically the kind of utility of that is like walking into a middle, like it's like walking to a neighborhood in the projects and throwing a Toni Morrison book in the middle of the road and expecting like shit to work out. Like, no, that's not how this fucking works, man. You need to meet people where they're at. And I do get that. And I think there is a way to do it that, you don't necessarily need to play into the naturalism. You don't necessarily need to play into the stereotypes. Like, again, I appreciate it for what it's doing, and there is the chance that it may even be successful with a certain demographic, and it may actually institute some sort of sea change for a person. I am not discounting the possibility of that happening whatsoever. That being said, it is something that feels like very, very well intentioned, but while you're listening to it, it does kind of feel a little bit like a car crash. There's just so many things that are designed against itself that it ends up feeling, again, it ends up feeling jagged and weird. And even if you end up getting along with it, I feel like it's impossible to ignore that there are so many stumbling blocks that some people just aren't going to be able to make it through the midsection of this fucking thing. And I don't blame them, but at the same time, we should acknowledge the fact that he is trying to make this for with a specific demographic in mind, and you can't just come out and start, reading marks at people. You can't just start out like again, you got to meet people where they're at to some degree. The thing is that we just need to find an equilibrium to be able to give human beings interiority. Like, we can't discuss people like objects and have the song in question be "Don't treat people like objects," unlike what we did in the song. And even if it's satirical with the sort of intended audience in mind, you ended up shooting yourself in the foot in a completely different way. And it's exactly like the J. Cole song where this exact sort of dilemma was brought up. And we did appreciate that for trying. Like, it was, in fact, something where I was like, look, you can feel however you want to about this song or about J. Cole, and especially about J. Cole's comments about trans people, which I am not fucking with at all, by the way. But this song specifically, I was like, no, this is a good stab at trying to portray this issue. I don't think it's perfect, but it's good enough. I don't think this is good enough, but I do still, at the end of the day, like, I really admire and respect YG for trying to, just because if you don't try, we're never gonna have songs like this be able to do anything or affect anyone or be heard by anybody. So like, it's a small price to pay at the end of the day, but like all I'm saying is that people just need to be a little bit more normal about this song. If you're making this into like a thing, I get the instinct, but there's nothing to be made there's nothing controversial to be made of this. A guy just tried to do something and didn't do it very well. That's all. Like, I don't really think it's that much deeper than that. He is trying to show that side of himself on this entire album, of a guy who is trying to understand. And that's the most compelling thing. Like, behind the bling and behind the money, behind the drugs, behind everything, YG is still a guy who will occasionally throw in a barb, who will occasionally throw in something that lets you know that, like, no, this is a guy who's like trying to be better as a human being despite his affiliations, which that's like please dig more into that. I will listen to an album of YG trying to tackle that. That sounds like something he's well equipped to do. That said,
There are plenty of moments on this album where he gets there,
yes.
like on Insecure.
Yes, the
My
final
favorite
two
song,
songs on this album are good, by the way. I really like them.
yeah, my favorite song on this album is Insecure, and I even have a
Yes.
big complaint about this, which is just that like I wish YG got the last word on it, even as good as
Mm-hmm.
Absol's verse is. But
Absol's verse is so good too.
what I love about this song is how blatantly it establishes this principle of I
Mm.
loved the little narration at the beginning of this where it's like honesty is what makes you solid.
Yeah.
And it extends that into not just being able to be honest with other people, but being able to be honest about yourself and be honest to yourself. And so YG screaming, I'm insecure as fuck is not a confession. It's something that he needs to convince himself.
Yeah.
And
It's a
so he's
mantra.
yeah, it's a mantra. It's a mantra that allows him to reflect on past mistakes and shortcomings and limitations. Like
And I mean, like,
I
is
love
that
the way
not like a
he
problem in hip hop? Is that like people don't know how to articulate what their insecurity actually is? And I'm not saying that to be like condescending. It's just that people grow up and they aren't taught how to deal with their emotions. And so when you do feel insecure as an adult, you don't know what name to put to that. And it ends up manifesting in weird, ugly ways. And I feel like YG is actually reckoning with that exact concept on here. And that's really smart.
Yeah, I mean, think about the way that he talks about sex on his
Hmm.
verse, talking about how, sex is something that you do to prove yourself, not
Hmm.
just to the person that you're having sex with,
But to
but to the
yourself
other people that are
and
going to
other
hear about
people.
it later and to
Hmm.
yourself. So don't act like you enjoy it. Make it last as long as possible and hope nobody hears about it.
Yeah. That's,
It
I mean,
sounds it sounds horrible, but like
it's like
that is what it
masculinity dressed
is.
down to its barest essentials. Like it's a smart critique, honestly.
Yeah, it's a really smart critique. He's talking about how afraid he is of being seen as vulnerable, even while doing the most vulnerable of human functions.
And by all means, something that he should not get sideways looks at for it's like we are literally turning into the meme of just like, oh, you're having sex with a girl, it's so gay, bro. Like we are literally there. It's ridiculous. And
We're
it's very
there.
refreshing to hear someone point out that it's ridiculous. It's like, what do you fucking mean sleeping with a woman is gay? What are you fucking talking about?
There's a moment on here where he talks about how he doesn't want her to moan too loudly because then
Yes.
he'll get too into it. And I was just like,
That's a
that's it right
great
there.
moment. My favorite moment on the album because it's just like I felt like I understood him as a human being. I was just like, wow, like that's something that I have never really even thought about having to worry about before. It's fucked up that anybody does. God damn, what the hell? Like you're
Yeah,
supposed to
because it's
be
like
enjoying the most human act possible, and a sign that your partner is enjoying it is something that you associate with negatively. And it's like, hey guys, do you know how misogyny breeds? Because that's how. That's you build resentment internally. That's what happens. That's the point
yeah,
he's making.
misogyny breeds when you breed badly in this case. Sorry, I had to say it.
Bars!
You
Bars,
teed me
Shen!
up.
Get
You
on the
teed me
mic!
up.
Get on the mic.
I love Jid and Absol's verse on this. Jid,
Shit's great.
especially. The first little bit of Jid's verse has been floating around for a little bit,
Yep.
actually. The
Yep.
whole or not I used to be defensive. There's a bit at the start of this that was a snippet that was floating around for like 5 or 6 years, these
Hmm.
bars. But he puts them in on this song. I love the way that Jid is just talking about like being defensive. I
Yeah.
used to be defensive and deflective, acting out. But then there's also, and you're taught to take one to the chest with a smile, even if you fucked up, and taking risks and not getting the reward. Like Jid is really able to get in on the trappings that you fall into as a young person when you have something to prove to other people.
Yeah.
And Absol as an older rapper, I love the direction that his verse goes because he goes back to his childhood
Yeah.
and talks about how his Stevens Johnson syndrome made him ugly
Yeah.
made him unloved, like led to him getting harassed in middle school and then going
Which
from
like God,
going from
it's
that kid that but he spins it around on himself where he's like, I don't just want you to pity that. I also have to reckon with that setting me up for now that I'm a big famous rapper and that I can have anyone that I want. I'm completely like overwhelmed with decision fatigue and the
and how could you
inability to,
not be? I mean, like, this is an
yeah,
aspect of hip hop stardom that utterly fascinates me, that is unfortunately has been on the margins of what people talk about when they talk about hip hop for so long. And it's why I'm glad that people like YG and why I'm glad that people like Kendrick are out here being very, very vulnerable and very, very open because it's interesting. It's not even just about like visibility or, all those words and talking points. It's just, it makes the environment of discussing these ideas so much richer. And if we have somebody like Absol who puts all of this so thoughtfully, like the portrait that he paints of just him as a lonely child who thinks he's going to be, grow up being unloved by everyone is just it's depressing. Like it affected me. I was deeply, deeply moved by Absol on here, honestly. Please drop another album soon.
it's one of the few, like Jid and Absol both, one of the few guest verses that actually appropriately tie together the
Yes,
themes of
yes, they
the
understood
album.
the assignment.
Yeah, they both understood the assignment. Thank you very much. Yeah, my favorite stretch of this album is the ending. I loved Insecure. I like Midlife
Midlife
Crisis
crisis.
quite a bit.
Yes.
And I loved like the way that he's just been able to talk about because I related to this more than any point on the album when he talks about his dad getting sick or
Yeah.
like his dad, like my dad had a stroke and I've just done all this work to provide for my family. And now this thing has happened that's completely out of my control. And there's this bar where he's like, and if you know me, you know I'm a control freak. And again, it's like a reinforcing of who the audience of this is
Yeah.
and a reinforcing of like his not his shortcomings, right? His want to be so in control is the thing that's led him to like self-destructive behaviors in the place of not indulging his own suicidality, for
Yeah.
example, or like having to be in control over every moment of a sexual encounter, for example. Like understanding YG as a control freak, ironically, makes so much more of this album make sense to me. It
Oh,
makes
for sure.
the whole shtick of We Know the Truth make sense to me because he's talking about like, no, I need to make sure that like I'm being understood, so I'm gonna get all this out even if it doesn't come out 100% the way that I want to, and even if it's taken in bad faith, like uh, um, We Know the Truth is it's not a great song, but
Yeah.
it's indicative of the state that he's in a way that strengthens the album. And where I think I come away with being positive on this is that I appreciate the second thing that I just said more than the first, which is that even when these songs aren't as good, I still know why they're here.
They are
And
never uninteresting.
I feel the intention behind them at
No,
all
there's
times.
a push and pull that this album has. Totally. Absolutely.
And I like thinking about that push and pull and I like wrestling with it because there's not been any hip hop this album this year that's made me think about the inherent performativity of the rapper in
Yeah,
the way that this does. Even on Isaiah Rashad, when I was like, the rapper is a porn star is one of the best bars of the year. And it is, but
yes.
YG goes into the idea of gender performance on this album much more explicitly, while also kind of messing it up in a lot of key ways that ultimately wrap around for me to reinforcing what the album is really about, which is about trying to be better, not
Yeah.
just being better.
The actual, yeah, I think that's an important distinction to make. And it's also why I'm upset that I don't enjoy the album more because, again, there is just so much recognizable effort here. And even at the end of the day, if you look at this squarely for what it is at face value and nothing more, it is so much more thoughtful than just the garden variety gangster rap that you might see, shoved onto you by a streaming service or whatever. It's like there is so many attempts at nuance on here that it is a good thing that this album exists. It is a good thing that people have heard this and have thought about it because I'm like you. this has not made me think more about the idea of the modern rapper than anything that's come out this year. And there have been a lot of fucking hip hop albums that have made you think about that. Again, you said the Isaiah Rashad album was one of them, and the J. Cole album obviously is one of them. I mean, if you wanted to count Drake in there, I guess you could if you consider that music, but we're jury's still out on that. But still, this is the kind of thing that, like, if this is the default, if this is what's going to be considered like typical gangster rap now, that's really good. I'm glad that that's the case. Even if it's not always successful, it's trying very, very hard. And that's really all I can ask for. And like, it's not low effort and it's not like I can feel YG like, he's been in it for a while now, like at least like a little more than 10 years. But I
Yeah.
don't think it's sort of wrong of me to assume that he could grow as an artist, potentially sharpen himself, because I mean, it feels like that's what he's doing. It feels like he's trying to kindle himself in a fire that he set. And I understand, like, I get it. You want to challenge yourself and you want to make yourself better, and you're only going to do that by failing a couple of times first. So, ironically, if it comes to thumbs up and thumbs down, I don't like this album, but I do recommend that you listen to it.
That's an interesting yes. I come on, I will say that I like this album. I do. Because
And I
I
get it.
think that even its hookier, more hedonistic parts have grown
Enjoyable.
on me a little bit. Like I do genuinely love On the Low. Like that's my favorite of the just
And it
straight
all
up not
sounds so good too. Like,
yeah,
whoa.
like on the low, he's doing this Yin Yang Twins homage where he's
Yeah,
whispering throughout the whole verse, and then
it's
Tyler just
fun.
comes in and fuck that, I can't even whisper.
It's a good flow.
So
I really
funny.
like it. I agree. I
So
agree.
funny. But yes, big thumbs up to YG. I really enjoyed thinking about this album this week.
Yeah,
And
this
I'm gonna
gave
keep
me a
thinking
lot to
about it.
chew on. I'm very glad that we ended up covering it just because, when somebody breaks from the pack like this, they deserve to be acknowledged for it, even if they don't necessarily hit a home run immediately. And I mean, why would we expect anybody to? This is a pretty fucking ambitious thing to do. Like this is a very ambitious album. I would say that that's like its primary like attribute is that it is ambitious. It's not super unique in its ambitions, but I don't think it has to be. I just think that it's a really worthwhile try.
If you would like to support the show, you can do so by joining our YouTube community page where you can hang out with us on our Discord. Follow us on Blue Sky at JamsNT with an N, not an ampersand. And as always,
Rock over London. Rock on Chicago. Have a break. Have a Kit Kat. Kit Kat. Ending the slogan with the name is a bit clumsy, I must admit. They fucked up there.